What is up, guys? Wrestling Premier is here. Personally, it's kind of weird to believe this was The Undertaker's last title reign. Why? Well, at this point, he was full-time on SmackDown, and it seemed like there was no end in sight. Obviously, he ended up going part-time a year later, but I believe had he never gotten that facial injury in May of 2010, guarantee in my eyes he would have won the title. I mean, Ray slotted into his spot and won the title himself. That's what makes me believe he would have been an 8-time champion. A bunch of stuff would have happened. But yes, I do think they would have gone that route. Yeah, it's just a weird what if. With that said, The Undertaker's final title reign ranks pretty high in my opinion. Out of his 7, it's definitely in his top 3 along with 97 and 07 probably. Is it the best one? Subjective. I could see why many say 97 because he had a string of decent to good title matches against Mankind, Austin, Vader, Hart, and 07 because of the whole Batista ordeal, although it was a 1-month title reign. As for this one, it featured a couple of entertaining matches and stories such as Jericho, Batista, Ray, and the very fun Elimination Chamber match. Taker's 09, although he missed nearly the entire spring and summer seasons, was decent. Right now, let's get into it. As you may know, the previous champion was CM Punk. Punk had a monster of a summer with Jeff Hardy. Check out this video if you haven't. It's one of my personal favorites. It's not because of the quality, it's just the feeling I had when I made it. Yeah, it's definitely my top 3 videos. So after getting rid of Hardy, Punk was garnering heat from everyone. The fans, and unfortunately in this case, from management. Now, why did management have an issue with CM Punk? Well, rumor has it, keyword rumor has it, on a European tour from September 24th to September 28th, 2009, CM Punk wasn't dressed professionally. So Taker approached him and told him that he needs to represent the company as he's the top champion. Punk took exception to this and mentioned John Cena and his following of the dress code, which consisted of jorts. This made way to management. They believed Punk thought he was a bigger star than Cena, and so he lost the title. Now, is this story true? Well, it's just a rumor, but there might be some truth to it. Why? Well, Punk, after the events, fell down the card in rapid pace, unlike anyone else. By TLC, CM Punk wasn't even on the pay-per-view. He competed in a dark match before the event. I do believe that was harsh, because dropping the title because he didn't know the rules, like, come on. I mean, he's not supposed to know everything. Maybe it's because he had a bad attitude. But if it's about the rule thing, like, that's kind of messed up. I do think he was going to drop it regardless, but in a more dramatic fashion, perhaps double the time. Now that The Undertaker was world champion again, he answered everybody that knocked on his door. On the October 9th, 2009 episode of SmackDown, The Undertaker came out to discuss his title victory. Now, if you were watching during this era, 2009 to 2010, you notice how The Undertaker spoke a lot compared to 04 to 07. He probably uttered more words in a promo than his entire preceding run, basically. Upon entering the ring, Taker received a large amount of cheers before speaking. He called himself the Reaper of Wayward Souls and the World Heavyweight Champion. Taker mentioned how the road of many souls will end in his yard, a graveyard. At this point, Teddy Long had just announced that Batista, CM Punk, and Rey Mysterio would challenge for the title, so that's what the champion was speaking about. He promised to take CM Punk's soul at bragging rights. Rey Mysterio, he received praise from the dead man, but he refused to treat him differently. And Batista, sure, the battles from the past were epic, but Batista's strength and rage will not be enough to save his own soul. One by one, each of those men will fall below the shadow of The Undertaker, and one by one, they'll rest in peace. Meanwhile, CM Punk thought the Fatal 4-Way was ridiculous, and he wanted to get that one-on-one rematch he had. He suggested a submission match, but Vince refused to cancel the Fatal 4-Way. But despite this, the Second City Saint got his title match the next week. About that match, CM Punk wanted the exact same scenario to go on. Scott Armstrong, the referee, in the last submission match, he wasn't really keen on this idea because, for context, there was the Montreal screw job, which happened for the millionth time, I guess. Yes, that's exactly what happened. Teddy Long was worried about his job, and CM Punk tried getting them to see his perspective, but they weren't really on the same page. As Scott was leaving, Vince entered the room, and we never got to see or hear anything. Later that night, though, CM Punk came out along with those two, and they were quite reluctant to go through with another screw job, which I kind of don't understand why it happened in the first place. It's a confusing subject that I don't think they ever acknowledged why The Undertaker was screwed. Anyways, Punk was on cloud 9. There was no way he was going to lose this one. During the match, Punk was looking to break the rules. He demanded a chair, but Teddy Long, who was on probation, handed it to Scott Armstrong. And once Punk used it, it hit him in the face. Taker realized the conspiracy and chokeslammed Armstrong for staring a hole into Teddy Long. Punk managed to capitalize by using that chair, and he called for another referee. The Anaconda Vice was locked in, and Teddy was signaling for the bell, but the whole plan backfired just then when Taker locked in Hell's Gate. Punk, after only a couple of seconds, tapped out. The GM was crying his eyes out, and SmackDown went off the air. He didn't reverse the decision like last time, I guess. Also, Vince's involvement wasn't really explained. He just appeared that night and decided to, stack the deck against The Undertaker. I don't know. Anyways, the match at Bragging Rights was decent. I did feel the story was more about Batista and Ray, and the only thing I do think harmed the match was the length. Had they gotten 10 more minutes, I think it'd be talked about today. Everyone looked good out there, especially Batista. It seemed like he was poised to win the title. Punk had a moment where the title was actually in his possession, and Ray, he was selfish in stealing the title win from Batista. Batista at one point shouted, "You're supposed to be my friend," which I found funny, and Taker capitalized on this drama and managed to steer past the three men to retain the title. Yes, it was a fun match. Now that Taker was done, or somewhat finished with these three challengers, he was off to the next challenger. It wasn't one guy, it was actually two, and it was Jericho. Chris received the title shot by winning a number one contenders match against Kane, while Big Show, he went rogue and turned on Team Raw bragging rights. He turned heel, yet he was a heel at the same time, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. At this point, Jericho had yet to face The Undertaker in a title match of any kind, and the match itself had WrestleMania potential, and yes, it could have been featured on either 25 or 26, and I'm not over-exaggerating. Watch Jericho's run from that time, and you'll see he's pegged on the highest level. He's up there with all the top guys at that time. 08 to 2010, Jericho was in the upper echelon. He was always on the level of the top guys. Jericho interrupted Taker's promo one night and called himself the true phenom of the WWE, and he believed he was the only person that could stand up to The Undertaker. Why? Because he could admit that the dead man has been brainwashing his gelatinous tapeworms. He promised to beat The Undertaker and become champion for the 6th time, and he claimed that he wasn't intimidated at all. He said that he knows that Taker is just a man. He called himself the new phenom once again before asking, "Man, Taker, if he understands." From there, it turned into a brawl, and Taker kicked his ass without even dropping the title. On the November 13th, 2009 episode of SmackDown, Chris Jericho faced The Undertaker for the first time ever. The match itself wasn't bad, but regardless of the quality, it was awesome to see these two face off for the first time. They could have done it at a big pay-per-view, but they decided to go with SmackDown, which is something that many probably thought, oh, it's a pay-per-view match. Y2J targeted the left knee to go for the walls during the match. Taker was resilient, and at a moment's notice, he forced Jericho to tap out to Hell's Gate. Unfortunately for Taker, Big Show came in to pick up the pieces. Jericho attacked and locked Taker in that torturous hold when Kane ran in there to make the save. Show left and Jericho got booted. Backstage, Vince booked the Brothers of Destruction reunion for next week, and they were set to face Jericho. The little reunion went well for the brothers, but by the end of it, Big Show was the one who stood tall. He tried helping up his buddy Jericho, who suddenly hit a code breaker on his own tag team partner. He hoisted the title in the air as the fans booed. The match at Survivor Series, it wasn't special or anything like that, but you could enjoy it. There was, however, the special moment in this match, this.
Back to Toronto. I'm from Winnipeg, you idiot.
Initially, Jericho worked together as a cohesive unit to ground The Undertaker, but obviously they imploded. I mean, Big Show betrayed his own brand to get a title shot. His knee was hurting throughout the match, which I believe was legit. And once again, the champion took advantage of the drama between the competitors. And at one point, Jericho tried going for that damn tombstone. But yes, Taker, he retained the title by catching Show off guard with Hell's Gate. So at this point, anyone that was lined up, Taker went right through him, but an old rival from the past, or 2 months earlier, stepped up to the challenge once again. After beating Kane in a number one contenders match on the November 27th episode of SmackDown, Batista made his presence felt by interfering in Taker's match with Chris Jericho and attacking. He brought in a chair and delivered a mean assault. Chair shots to the back and the face. He once again brought the fight the following week, albeit with an unfair advantage. Well, unlike the others, and no, I'm not a part of the commentary team, who's gonna stop this guy or whatever the hell they say. Not many stepped up to The Undertaker like Batista did. And if you were Batista, why would you be scared? He beat him clean in the past. The match was announced as a chairs match for the TLC pay-per-view, and 2 nights before the event, The Undertaker finally retaliated. He delivered a flurry of punches to send Batista running. Now, the match at TLC wasn't on the level of their previous matches at all. It failed to reach even their weakest bout's level. It wasn't bad outright, but going in, many probably expected something way better. Batista was slowly starting to come into his own as a heel, and another thing that's frowned upon from the match was the dusty finish. First of all, Batista managed to escape the Hell's Gate hold, right? Then, he low blows Taker and blasts him with a mean-looking chair shot to finally win the title. So now he's champion. It was a long time coming, and after 2 years, Batista finally wins back the gold. Then, Teddy Long came out and reversed the damn decision. Why? Because Batista low blow Taker, and basically chairs are legal but low blows aren't. It was confusing. But that doesn't matter. He then restarted the match, and if I was Batista at this point, I would have slapped his bald ass. He didn't restart the match when Punk cheated, yet he does it to me. That's what Batista was probably thinking at that moment. Once he entered the ring, he was dead. That's it. He didn't even have much time to breathe, and Taker capitalized. So now Teddy's best friends with The Undertaker again. He just couldn't live without him. The next night, Batista wearing a pink polo thinking he's Kanye, despite the outdated reference by 3 months, interrupted Maria and complained about getting screwed. He did get another opportunity to get a title shot in that week's SmackDown, though, but he lost. He lost to who? He lost to Rey Mysterio. As for Rey's title match with Taker, first of all, I remember at the time I was really hyped for this one, because never before was there a match between Taker and Rey one-on-one. I do know they faced off in 2003, but this was before Rey became a main eventer, a top guy in the company. And my dumbass thought, maybe, just maybe, it's Rey's night. He did bring the fight. He tried to chop down the tree in order to get some sort of advantage, but Taker brought him back down to earth, and before the match could wrap up, Batista interfered. He asserted his dominance and stood tall above the world champion, but the whole thing was flipped on its head a couple of seconds later. Taker recovered, only to receive a 619. He caught Rey in midair, but Batista made the save with a spear. He then found himself in 619 position, and it was actually Rey who stood tall in the end. So now that Taker was left without a challenger, Vicky Guerrero booked a Beat the Clock challenge for the first SmackDown of 2010. Now, if my memory serves me right, that episode was fun. Rey, he had to beat CM Punk's time of 7 minutes and 20 seconds, but the problem with this was that he was facing Chris Jericho. As you may know, the two had some tremendous chemistry, and there was doubt over whether or not Rey was actually even going to win this one, let alone beat the clock. There was high drama even in the final seconds. Jericho was mostly in control, but after complaining to the ref, he ended up losing. He went nuts. Punk was dying inside, and all Rey had to do now was watch Batista's match and pray that he wins the damn thing. Batista, though, during his match with R-Truth, he was wasting time. He was taunting Rey, and this ended up costing him, because Rey, like a true heel, pulled the ref from out of the ring, and this ended up giving him the Beat the Clock Challenge victory. And look at that evil smile. Luckily, the teacher, Vicky Guerrero, gave Rey Mysterio a little lecture on the rules of SmackDown, and since Rey essentially cheated, she booked a #1 contenders match between Rey and Batista for the title. Taker made his presence felt during the match, and for some weird reason, which I don't understand to this day, the fans had to wait another week to see who's the #1 contender. It was the most random ending, and I bet it annoyed a bunch. Since these two couldn't settle their differences in that match, it led to a steel cage match, which saw Rey win. Side note, I will remake Batista's run in the near future. I realized how great that video was a year ago, but I can make it better and so much longer. And this run doesn't deserve 10 minutes. It deserves freaking 20 or something. Hell, if it could get to 30, we'll get to 30. But yes, eventually I will do it. I'm just kind of busy right now, and that's all. So now that The Undertaker had an opponent for the Royal Rumble, he had a few words for the Master of the 619. On the January 22nd, 2010 episode of SmackDown, Rey Mysterio called out The Undertaker. He showed no fear, and he refused to be afraid of The Undertaker. The champion asked if Rey had second thoughts, to which he admitted he kind of does. Rey mentioned the last title reign he had and how he would do whatever it takes to win. Rey said that he had his nightmares, but he's conquered them all with his dreams, and that's what he's going to do to become the World Heavyweight Champion. He proclaimed himself as the victor at the Royal Rumble, and The Undertaker finally responded. The Undertaker was well aware of the fact that Mysterio's conquered everything that was in front of him in life, but he reminded Mr. 619 that the grave conquers everything, and he admired Rey's guts for his pursuit in winning the gold, but he warned him, saying that he's digging his own grave. He informed him that at the Royal Rumble, he will rest in peace. As the dead man was walking to the back, Rey finally spoke. He denied being like the rest that came before him, and then Batista attacked, showing that maybe he's still in the title picture. Now, the match at the Royal Rumble was pretty good. I really loved the visual of a bloody Taker, as it made him look even more menacing. Taker didn't really underestimate Rey like many, as he knew just how good Mysterio was. As for Rey, as expected, he utilized some high-flying moves to get an edge in the match. The champion throughout the match manhandled the challenger, and Rey, he just had to rely on mistakes at this point. When he did hit the 619, it wasn't enough to knock down The Undertaker, let alone get the 3 count. Once he got a second 619, Taker caught him in the air and hit the last stride to retain the title. Overall, a good match that at some points, many didn't think would ever happen. So another challenger bites the dust. Who's next? Well, it was 5 other men in the Elimination Chamber. Not only that, but a hungry rated R superstar was looming over the winner's head. Despite this, it seemed like The Undertaker had his work cut out for him, and about the Chamber match, it was in my eyes a fun match. It had a weird pace to it, as most of it initially was just one-on-one, and the time certainly flew by fast, although the match clocked in at 35 minutes. Add to the fact that The Undertaker literally got burned during his entrance Not a good thing. It was memorable. The commentary team tried explaining it as the Undertaker was hell-bent on defending the title and he was in a rush to enter his pod. It's a testament to Taker's dedication to Vince and the company to continue the match. Like, damn. Throughout the match, CM Punk cut a damn promo about everyone. He eliminated R-Truth and delivered another sermon of sorts. He suggested Taker pray his pod door open last because he'll make him tap out. John Morrison, his decadent rock life will get him nowhere. Unfortunately for Punk, Ray entered the match. Those two had a little fun stretch that should have lasted longer, but it's understandable why it didn't. Poor Ray was launched into the chain link fence, and not only that, he was sent like a lawn darts into a pod. It was crazy, but despite this, Mysterio kicked out and managed to get rid of CM Punk. From there, Jericho entered the match, and obviously Ray and Chris couldn't do anything wrong. Jericho, before the match, guaranteed victory, and they would soon be joined by John Morrison, and this is where the pace picked up. The first shocker turned out to be Mysterio's elimination. Morrison, man, they made him look good out there. He managed to hang in there with Jericho and The Undertaker, and once the champion entered, he had too much momentum. Sure, he could be knocked down, but not for long. Morrison was the one who was wilding. He was climbing the chamber, jumping off of it, taking choke slams on the pod, and it was then where he was eliminated. But for me, I believe he was the MVP of the match, and it was down to 2. Taker took down his straps, and it was go time. Both men went back and forth. Walls, Hell's Gate, barely a code breaker from out of nowhere. A last stride, and The Undertaker believed it was time to wrap it up. Shawn Michaels from Hornswoggle's lair emerges. He hits the sweet chin music on The Undertaker, and Jericho goes for the cover. 1, 2, 3. Jericho's done it. 6th time. Damn, that was a fun match. Cool spots, and it's probably not even in my top 5 chamber matches, but I liked it. Maybe it is. Probably give a list eventually, but yes, I really enjoyed this match. Wasn't the greatest chamber match there is, but I just like the feeling of it, basically. The fact that Shawn interfered to set the stage for WrestleMania and Jericho won the title for the 6th time, yeah, it's definitely my favorite match from this title reign. All the other matches Taker had on pay-per-view were either underwhelming or too short. This one hit the sweet spot in terms of length, and it made for an extravagant ending to the title reign. It ties into the story between Shawn and The Undertaker, as he declined the challenge a month earlier, and it came back to bite him. Plus, Shawn had no other choice. He lost the Rumble, and he was scrambling for a way to get the match. And that's The Undertaker's title reign. It lasted for about 140 days, spanning from October 4th all the way up to February 21st, 2010. In that time period, Edge returned from injury, Cena lost and won the WWE title, and lost it again. Batista turned heel, Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan took over TNA, Bret Hart returned it on paper. It doesn't feel that long. I don't know why, it was like 140 days, but it didn't feel all that long. Favorite match of the Chamber, so yeah. What did you guys think of The Undertaker's title reign? Please comment down below. And that's your first video. Make sure you hit a choke slam on the like button, and perhaps the tombstone pile driver on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.